talking Red River. So let's talk Texas, Oklahoma, as Oklahoma wins 34-30, signature win for Brent Venables, signature win for Oklahoma in this era. And for anybody who doubted the Sooners, they are officially back as a playoff contender and back in the top 10 of college football. First of all, when I think about this game, a couple things stand out. One, just everything we love about college football, right? And we don't have to get into the pomp and circumstance, but I do think it is important. I mean, Cotton Bowl, Texas State Fair, two crazy fan bases, a rivalry that outside of last year always delivers. And by the way, last year, Oklahoma was banged up. Dylan Gabriel was hurt, right? But it always delivers. And from the second this game started, you could feel how important it was to these two teams, not just because first place in the Big 12 is on the line, not just because, a pathway to the Big 12 championship game and maybe the college football playoff is on the line, but just because how badly these two teams want to beat each other. I thought it was interesting. Kirk Herbstreit said during the game, we've been to a bunch of great games this year. The speed and physicality and the hitting in this game are unlike anything we've ever seen. You could feel it from the moment this game started. 2 interceptions early for Texas, a blocked punt for Texas that led to 7, fake reverse handoffs on kickoffs. Both teams were playing to win from the beginning, and it was incredible. Now, in terms of the game itself, to me, I'll be blunt. I think it came down to really kind of 2 moments in this game. Both went in Oklahoma's favor. Both kind of came at the expense of Steve Sarkisian, who I did not think had a good day. Now, to be clear and to be fair, we'll have Oklahoma fans listen to this segment on podcast or YouTube. I'm not taking away from what you did. I'm not saying that the wrong team won. Oklahoma deserved to win. Oklahoma was the better team, and Oklahoma fans should celebrate. But I also just don't think it was a very good day for Steve Sarkisian. The 2 moments to me that stand out in this game, when I think back on this game, a couple things. One, late in the third quarter, everybody knows what I'm talking about. Texas is down 27-20. They are driving. They are on the 1-yard line, 1st and goal on the 1. And Steve Sarkisian is, and you guys know me, I'm not scheme guy. I'm not X's and O's guy. I'm not draw plays in the dirt guy. But Steve Sarkisian is, in my opinion, the best offensive mind in college football in terms of scheming creative stuff to get his guys open. You have 1st and goal on the 1, down 7 late in the third quarter. And it felt like he wanted to prove he was Jim Harbaugh or old school Big Ten, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Because for 3 straight plays, he just lined up a bunch of big guys in the backfield and tried to get that touchdown. Didn't get it on 1st down. Didn't get it on 2nd down. Didn't get it on 3rd down. Then on 4th down, he runs a screen pass. He kind of realizes, oh, crap, I got to score here. Runs a screen pass. It gets stopped. Texas ends up getting 0 points on that drive, trailing 27-20. Can't get 0 there, even if you get 3. Remember, it was a scenario where what was the final score of this game? It was 34-30, so maybe 3 doesn't end up being good enough. You don't know, but at the same time, you can't come away with nothing there. And so you don't get anything there. And then I thought late in the game, final drive, Steve Sarkisian coached a little bit scared. Now, it's hard to blame him for taking the field goal for people who did not see the game. Basically, Texas had ultimately ended up tying the game. It was 27-27 at that point. Texas has the ball. And ultimately, what you need to know on this final possession for Texas, all game long, we have been told by the announcers, by the people that spent time with these two teams, Steve Sarkisian does not trust his kicker, okay? So Texas is in field goal range, and on 3rd down, they have a 3rd and 10. And in my head, again, I'm not scheme guy, but you think, okay, maybe Sark tries to throw it deep because if he gets a 1st down, he can bleed out the clock and Oklahoma will not get the ball back. Instead, he decides to run a run play. He gets 6 yards. It sets up 4th and 4, and they do ultimately kick what ends up being the go-ahead field goal. And so on the one hand, you can't really blame Steve Sarkisian for taking the field goal there. But I've been told all game that you don't trust the kicker. And if you don't trust the kicker, I don't really care if you're 6 yards back from where you ended up kicking the ball. I don't care if it's 4th and 4 or 4th and 10. I'd rather try to get that 1st down to put yourself in position where, again, you can chew up the clock, bleed out the clock, and then you can still kick the field goal. And at worst case, you're going to overtime. And if not in worst case, then you're in a scenario where you can kick a field goal to win it with much less time on the clock. Instead, Oklahoma gets the ball back. And instead, we had some old school Sooner magic. For people who are new to college football, Barry Switzer always used to call it Sooner magic. They always find a way to win. And that is exactly what happened as Dillon Gabriel gets the ball back. The Oklahoma quarterback, 5 plays, 75 yards, under a minute and a half. They get into the end zone, and Oklahoma ends up winning the game. Now, in terms of big picture stuff, let's talk about the big picture ramifications for both teams, because I think there's a lot that we learned. One, from the Oklahoma perspective, before we get into what does this mean? What about that? What about this? What about the playoff? What about the Big 12? Let me start with something pretty straightforward. I think that many people, including me, including this guy right here, I like to tell you all the stuff I get right. I was dead wrong on Brent Venables. And it really goes back to this game last year. And I understand that Oklahoma came in without Dillon Gabriel, their starting quarterback, and they were banged up. But they had gotten embarrassed by TCU a week before. They had lost to Kansas State. They came into this game on a 2-game losing streak. The defense was getting gashed time and time again. And after they lost to Texas in the manner in which they did, this is what I said on this show. I said, I'm not saying that it's ever going to happen. You're never going to fire a head coach in your first year, whatever. But I think it's very clear that Brent Venables isn't the right guy and that this program is going in the wrong direction. And my argument at the time was pretty straightforward. I understand he did not inherit a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football from who, I won't mention his name, Oklahoma fans, the previous head coach who's now at Southern Cal. I also understand that Oklahoma fans will tell you there were culture issues in the locker room, maybe not the perfect group of guys. Again, not here to blame a former coach, not here to blame any individual, but that's what Oklahoma fans told you. But what I said at the time was pretty straightforward. I said, I don't care about roster numbers. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. At the end of the day, Brent Venables is a defensive guy. The Oklahoma defense in who's final year in 2021 was not terrible. And Oklahoma's defense last year was. And so I said, I'm not saying he's going to get fired. And I talked about it. I said, listen, there's stuff on this show. I talk about what could happen, what should happen, what will happen. And I said, it's not going to happen. It will not happen. And it's not that it could happen. But should it happen, you should consider moving on from Brent Venables right away. And I was dead wrong. I got to own it because now Oklahoma is 6-0 coming out of this game. And when you look at the present and future of Oklahoma, a couple things stand out. One, how do you not feel good about Oklahoma? How do you not feel good about your program if you're an Oklahoma fan? One, you're 6-0. You're one of only 2 Big 12 teams that's undefeated in the Big 12 standings. West Virginia, of all teams, is the other one. But you look at the rest of the schedule, and I know, listen, in college football, you can't take any Saturday for granted, right? Any Saturday, something bad can happen. But you look at the schedule. Oklahoma has a grand total of 1 ranked team left on the schedule at Kansas 3 Saturdays from now. Yes, Kansas is ranked. Rest of the schedule, Central Florida, which stinks, at Kansas, at Oklahoma State, which stinks, West Virginia at home, BYU on the road, TCU at home. And so you're in great shape to meet all of your expectations because at this point you have the head-to-head win against Texas and you can afford a loss and still be in position to do everything you want to do. And I'm not saying you root for a loss, but what I'm just saying is if you're Oklahoma, even if you trip up along the way, you're getting to that Big 12 championship game and you're playing ultimately probably Texas again to go to the college football playoff. And so when I look at the present and future of this program, I think it's bright because Venables, to his credit, recruited his butt off. Last year, a top 5 class. He's doing great this year. They got a really good class headlined by a 5-star defensive lineman. And that defense looks like what a Brent Venables defense looks like. Fast, aggressive, number 1 scoring defense in the Big 12. Number 1 nationally in turnover margin. They create chaos. They create confusion. They create turnovers. That is the fundamentals of a Brent Venables defense. So Oklahoma, you got to feel great about your present, about your future, about your path, by the way, all of a sudden to a playoff, which was something nobody was talking about coming into this year. From the Texas perspective, listen, I just said it. I don't think it was Steve Sarkisian's best day, but I don't think it's time to panic, because the one thing I'll give credit to Texas for, first of all, that Alabama win looks better and better and better every week. It's something that will always, I don't think there's a scenario where we get to the end of the year and all of a sudden it's like, they beat Alabama, who cares? So that's one. But two, listen, one team's got to lose this game, but it's kind of the same for Texas. Your whole pathway is still ahead of you, right? We've had a handful of undefeated college football playoff champions, but we've had a lot that make the playoff and that win the playoff with one loss. I'm not sitting here saying Texas is going to win the playoff, but from here, yes, your margin of error is thinner, but guess what? Who cares? Guess what? You are still in a great spot going forward. You look at this Texas team. First of all, you played your butt off. You outgained Oklahoma. I don't want to say you were better, because I don't think that you were, but that was a game that you could have won if a couple of things go your way. Now you have a bye. No one left on your schedule is ranked. The best team on paper is probably a 3-2 Kansas State team, maybe a 4-1 BYU team, but your road games are against a mediocre Houston team, a TCU team that's up and down, and Iowa State, which is certainly up and down as well, sitting at 3-3. And so for Texas, it's about regrouping, going into the bye week and saying, you know what? Everything that we want is still ahead of us. We wanted to compete for a Big 12 championship. That's right there for you. We wanted to compete for a playoff berth. That's still right there in front of you. Go there and take care of business. Do what you got to do the rest of the way. I think for college football fans, this is great, because now look at this thing. It's setting up to be an Oklahoma. That game that you just got, it's setting up to be a rematch about 7-8 weeks from now in Dallas at Jerry World, the first Saturday of December. So think about the fact that as great as that game was, we're about to get it again. And there's a very good chance that it is a de facto college football playoff game. If Texas wins out, and if Oklahoma, which is 6-0 right now, goes 5-1 or 6-0, it means that if both teams enter that game with 0 or 1 losses, it means that we're talking about two teams playing for a college football playoff spot. It's essentially going to be a de facto playoff game. So that is unbelievable. By the way, even if Texas loses, if they get back to that game, then all of a sudden they're playing spoiler, so there's just so much that could be at stake about 5-6 weeks from now. The last thing, I got to take another L, and I got to give credit where it's due. When Texas and Oklahoma announced they were going to the SEC, I said, these two programs are crazy. I said, I get it. I get that you're tired of the Iowa, no disrespect, but it's the truth. You're tired of the Iowa States. You're tired of the Kansases. You're tired of the Baylors. You want those big names, those big brands coming into your stadiums. It's just sexier to have Georgia and Florida and LSU and whoever on the schedule than it is Kansas State and Baylor and whomever. But at the same time, I said, listen, the pathway just got way tougher. Now, obviously, when they left, there was still a 4-team college football playoff, but it doesn't really matter. Now it's a 12-team playoff, but both of these teams, I didn't think either was going to be ready to go into the SEC a year from now. Look at the situation Steve Sarkisian took over. It was not pretty. He went 5-7 his first year. Brent Venables goes 6-7 a year ago. And so they've talked publicly, said all the right things about we're preparing for the SEC. Brent Venables has a little hourglass on his stand as a coach. His desk as a coach. I don't know why I said stand. But they have an hourglass that says, we're this many days away till the SEC, whatever. And I thought both those schools were crazy. I thought the pathway out of the Big 12 was much easier. But now you look at those two rosters, those two teams, how they're coached. Who do you feel better about over the next 5 years? Oklahoma or Florida? Both have a second-year head coach. I feel pretty good about Oklahoma. Texas or whoever. Both these teams are ready. Both these teams have rosters that are able to compete. Now, will they? I don't know. Both could, in theory, be having new quarterbacks. But the point is, neither of these programs is going to get left behind. I give both credit because both have figured out a way to win in the present, build towards the future. The future is bright for both. Credit Oklahoma. Credit Oklahoma fans. I was wrong. I'm Brent Venables.